Hello everyone. Welcome back to Accounts Receivable Management Part 2. This is the second part of the previous session, and I would like to give you a quick recap of what we have covered so far in Part 1. In Part 1, we defined accounts receivable and we saw what were the objectives of accounts receivable management and how it was a balancing act. It was discussed that it is an art and not a perfect science. And we also covered a brief overview of the 4 key aspects of credit policy. Credit policy being a key tool for successfully managing accounts receivables in the company. And we also delved into the 5 key influencing factors of the credit policy. And at the end of part 1, we also had a deep dive into one of the key aspects of credit policy. It was around assessing the credit worthiness of the customer and how we use the various source of informations available to assess the credit worthiness of the customer. So that's what we covered in part 1. Now, as a continuation in part 2, we will be exploring the remaining 3 key aspects of credit policy. The second key aspect which we will be looking into now is assessing the credit limit of the customer. Now, when we talk about the credit limit, there are 2 components to it. One is the amount of the credit, and 2 is the time for which the credit is allowed. We can refer back to my example of the water bottles. Now, I said we are selling 100 water bottles of $10 each to the customers, and that results in a total amount of $1,000, and that's my amount. That's the limit, that's the credit limit. And the second component was the timing. So we discussed that I'm offering this credit to my customers for 30 days credit period. Let's say the customer purchases the water bottles from me on the 1st of April. Now the 30 days credit period ends on 30th of April, and the customer will be obliged to make a payment back to me on the 1st of May. So that defines the time limit. So it's really important to take into account these 2 credit limits while defining the credit policy. And no matter what's the scale of the business, I might be running a business for $1,000, or I might be running a business for $100 million. It doesn't matter. The components, these 2 components, key components, are stable, and it is really important for the board to decide the limits of these 2 components. The board sets the limit and the management monitors the limit. So as a person, let's say as a CFO of a company, my key role is to monitor how the company is performing against these preset or predefined limits. For this, as a management professional, I will be looking into 2 key elements. One is my orders in the pipeline. So going back to the water bottle example, now I need to monitor how is my business going. So as I mentioned, on 1st of April, I have sold 100 bottles for $10 each. And now I need to go back to my sales department and understand what is the sales order in the pipeline. Am I estimating, say, 500 more bottles to be sold in the next 15 days on a period of 30-day credit? So, this is really, really important because that defines the health of the working capital, the health of the finance, and the cash flow system in the organization. That's really important. And the next element is the invoiced sales. It's really important to look into the amount of sales that's been invoiced, because selling is just the start of the journey, but the collection of the receivables really doesn't begin, really doesn't kickstart until the invoicing begins. So when we go into the next aspect, I will talk more on the invoicing. But as a management professional, as a CFO, on an ongoing basis, I really need to monitor the orders in the pipeline and also the invoiced sales ahead of increasing the limit, because this will be a key factor for me to determine the credit limit for a particular customer and ensure that the customers are not breaching these limits. They're not breaching the repayment of the dollar values, nor are they breaching the time. They're not going overdue. So it's really important for me to manage it and monitor it on an ongoing basis, to advise to the board and ensure that we are setting healthy credit limits. It's more like setting a benchmark. Now let us move on to the third key aspect of credit policy, which is invoicing and collecting overdues. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, the credit period begins only when an invoice is prepared. So prompt invoicing is really, really key to the process. I might have sold $1,000 worth water bottles today, but the credit period only begins from the date of the invoice. So if I'm actually entering into a sales on the 1st of April for 30 days period, but if I prepare the invoice only on the 5th of April, what's going to happen is the 30-day credit period will start from the 5th of April, in which scenario I have already set myself at a loss for 5 extra days, which means my money will reach back to me only at the end of 35 days, because I have delayed my invoicing by 5 days. So it's really important to be prompt. It has to go hand in hand. The sales and the invoicing has to go hand in hand to really make sense with the defined credit period. And now let's say I have sold 100 bottles, I have invoiced them on at time, and now it is 1st of May at the end of 30-day credit period. Now let's say the customer has not paid the money back to me, and that is called as an overdue, because the customer has now breached both the key components. One, he hasn't paid the dollar value, and two, he hasn't abided by the agreed credit period, which is 30 days. So in such case, what is my responsibility to ensure the financial health of my company? I need to ensure that I have a system in place to follow up and collect the overdues. And this is a very delicate process, because I need to keep in mind there is a huge risk of offending the valued customer and losing potential future business. So this has to be done in a sequential process. The dues have to be collected in a sequential, systematic process. So, in my example, let's say on 1st of May, after 30 days of credit period, my customer defaults to make a payment. It's an overdue. So, I will first send them a letter, a reminder letter stating, dear customer, you owe me $1,000 as on the 1st of May, and today is the 10th of May. I still haven't received it. It's a kind reminder, a gentle reminder. Please pay this back to me as soon as possible. And now it is, let's say it's 20th of May, and I've still not received the money back. And what do? So I'm going to pick up my phone. That's a second follow-up strategy. I'm just going to pick up the phone and speak to the accounts payable department and say, hello, this is so and so calling from the water bottle company. You bought $1,000 worth of water bottles, which is due to be repaid on the 1st of May, and today is the 20th of May. I sent you a reminder letter. Could you please make me a payment as soon as possible? That's a second, which is quite effective. And the third way is where I go one step ahead and I say, okay, I'm going to withhold any future supplies to this customer. Let's say there is a pipeline of 100 more water bottles to the same customer. What I will do is I will add this particular customer into the stop list, and I will not encourage any further supplies. This could be an effective way of collecting the overdues because it's going to cascade the impact on the future sales of the customers, and there is a possibility for them to pay back the funds as early as possible. And the next approach is to take help from debt collecting agencies. They are external organizations who professionally collect these services. However, they charge a fee. Let's say my profits on these water bottles is just $1 each, and I need to really make a decision as to whether I need to use a collecting agency at a cost of $100, because that is just going to be my profits on 10 bottles, so on 100 bottles. So I just don't want to lose all my profits on paying this debt collecting agency. So it is an expensive option, not suitable for a small organization, but still a very effective way if we can really see the feasibility of paying the fees for the debt collecting agencies. And the last option is to take legal action against the customer. As again, I mentioned to you, it is very expensive. We can approach a solicitor and issue a legal letter and take an action and can go to the court. But like as I mentioned, there is a huge question about the materiality. If I'm going to talk about $1,000 worth water bottles, I am definitely not going to consider this option of going to the solicitor and issuing a letter, because that's going to cost me a fortune. Again, there are advantages and disadvantages to each of these approaches. The effectiveness, the impact also changes, varies to each of these follow-up strategies. But yeah, it can be used on a case-by-case basis. Now let's move on to the fourth key aspect of a credit policy, which is monitoring the credit system. So as you may understand, any system has to be reviewed. It can't be set in stone because there's always various internal and external elements which is going to influence a system. So credit system is no exception. So it requires regular review, and corrective actions have to be taken when needed. One of the aspects is, let's say, for example, the credit limit, um, of or on the amounts which is being offered to a particular customer. Let's say, in this water bottle example, let's say my customer defaulted $1,000 worth credit sales. They didn't really prove their ability to repay that within 30 days. So, in which case, I might take a corrective action to uh, offer credit to this particular customer only for $500 worth sales, and that could be a corrective action which can save and protect my financial health. So that's really another key aspect of the credit policy. And there are few tools and methods to monitor. So we will look into three key methods here. The first is the age analysis. So for how long has the debts been outstanding? So in my example, the customer failed to pay for, say, 20 days. They didn't pay me until I decided to pick up the phone and talk to the accounts payable department. They were overlooked. They've defaulted. So the aging analysis. So the customer was supposed to pay the debt to me within 30 days, but in this example, they only paid it to me after 50 days. So that gives me a rough understanding of what's the time period the debt has been outstanding, which is 20 days, in excess of the agreed credit timing. So this kind of gives me an understanding of the credit worthiness and the ability of the customer. That's one of the methods in which I can monitor and take corrective actions, and therefore protecting my financial health. And the second method to monitor the system is to analyze the ratios. In part 3 of Accounts Receivable Management, I will take you through various methods of calculations and early settlement discounts and other strategies. And we'll also cover a lot of ratio analysis. So, ratio analysis is an effective tool for us to understand the trend and see when the customer is defaulting a payment and when it becomes an overdue or when it's becoming irrecoverable. So it just gives us a story around the sales and around the debt recoverables. It is a simple but an effective tool to monitor the system. And the last method to monitor the credit system is by using the statistical data. Data which will be helpful to unpack the root cause of the default. So, in my example, where the accounts payable department pays after my telephone call, I can just look back into my data and analyze, okay, what are the approaches that's worked here. So I had to call up the person in the accounts payable department, and that really tells me that I couldn't recover my debt until and unless I really called up the person. And so that sort of uncovers the type of the customer and the type of approach to which they're responding to. So this is, again, when we say statistical data, it is not just numerically statistical data. It's not just numbers, but there's also qualitative data which can provide us a story. So here I'm just going back and analyzing the behavior of the customer, and that sort of provides me an understanding as to how the customer is responding to. So they really needed that nudge, they really needed that reminder. The letter didn't work, but then a slightly hard push by giving them a call really worked. So that sort of again is a effective tool to monitor the system and ensure that as a company I have a sound credit policy. So yeah, to sum up, I think part one and part two of accounts receivable management has really uncovered some of the key elements, right from the objectives up until the credit policy and the key aspects of the policies for a company to have a sound policy, a credit policy to manage the accounts receivable in a effective way and ensure that the company can protect the financial health for a sustainable for a sustainable period of time. Um, Please look out for part three. As I mentioned, I will further provide you more information about the methods of calculating various various ratios and analyzing the effectiveness of the system. Until then, thank you. Thank you for listening. Have a good day. Bye.